Hey guys, it's Adam, back in another episode of Living in Denver. You've probably seen a lot of other videos on Denver recently, and a lot of them might have similar talking points. So this video today is gonna be 3 things you gotta look at, you gotta think about before moving to the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado. Hopefully you guys are gonna take a few things from this video today that maybe you haven't thought of before. So excited to share this one with you. Stay tuned. So as I said, welcome back to another episode of Living in Denver. As always, my name is Adam Lang. I'm a licensed realtor here in Denver, Colorado, and over 40 plus years of calling myself a Denver native. So a lot to share with you today. Before we get started though, that phone number and email, all that info down below. Would love just the opportunity to connect with you. So reach out, and don't forget, I have some brand new resources to download completely for free. The link is down below in the show notes. And one of these is my new relocation guide. I share with you all my favorite restaurants, bars, over 20 of the best Denver neighborhoods to consider living. Just a ton of really good resources for you. So make sure you guys get a free copy. Again, the link is down in the show notes. But let's go ahead and get started. Again, I want to share with you guys 3 things you got to think about and consider before moving here to the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado. So number 1, sunshine, but with a twist. And what I mean by this is, a lot of people talk about the crazy weather we can get in Denver and Colorado in general, but I just had this happen to us last week in Denver, so I wanted to make this the number 1 point that I talked about today. And that is how you can literally have 4 seasons all within one 24-hour period of time. And this is something that it might sound fun at first, like, yeah, great, Adam, I'd love to, have some variety in my life. But a lot of people, this really is a sticking point and something that they just don't want to have anything to do with, and it's a turnoff for some. So especially if you're somebody that might be a little bit older, or maybe you have some health concerns where you don't want to have to get out and shovel snow and deal with just the uncertainty of what weather we might be experiencing from one week to the next, something to think about. So definitely wanted to put this one as my first point. Again, when I say sunshine with a twist, Colorado's known for having over 300 days of sunshine a year. And I've even had some viewers respond to me when I've said that in the past about kind of some pushback on, is that really the case? Long story short, we get a lot of sunshine here. Denver is a city that is blessed to have, again, a lot of sunny days, which creates some great opportunities for getting out there and enjoying Mother Nature and hiking and just enjoying walks around some of our beautiful parks. Just all these great things that Denver has to offer partly are because of how much sunshine we get. But last week, so I'm filming this right now in the middle of November, we had one of the biggest early season storms to ever hit Denver. Some parts of Denver saw as much as almost 30 inches of snow, and this came after days in the 60s and even low 70s just a couple days before that. So, Denver is a place that always keeps you on your toes. The storm that we just had, one thing that made it unique, especially for people that might not be used to the different types of storms we can have here in Denver, it was incredibly wet. There was a lot of precipitation, so a lot of water in the storm. So some parts of Denver that might be a little bit closer to the mountains, a good example would be Golden, or also even a little bit further down south, like Littleton and the Ken Carroll region, which is the western side of Denver. Those areas saw significantly more snow, probably that closer to that 30-inch mark, and other places saw more in the 18 to 24 inches. Still a ton of snow. But one thing though that makes it especially difficult is snow shoveling. So when you're shoveling snow that has, let's just say you have a foot of snow and probably 6 to 8 inches of that is just water, we're talking heavy, 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 and very challenging to get off your driveway and then just find out where else to put it. A lot of times driveways have a slope that eventually connects with the city street. And where that transition is always a notorious place that a lot of people, shovel their snow into that area, and then it gets colder at night, it freezes, turns into this just mess, tons of snow, ice, hard to drive through, especially if you have a low profile vehicle. So long story short, there is just a lot of challenges and just kind of a headache with the snowstorms we get in Denver, especially in the early season, meaning going into the winter, and also in the springtime when we think we're done with it for a year. Without a doubt, there's always a couple more storms that hit and just really remind us of, what it really takes to just get this snow off the driveways and just being able to deal with it. As a homeowner, you also have to think about just the damage it can do to your house. Some of my neighbors had a couple massive branches break because of this heavy snow, and they just really weren't expecting it. There's still a lot of our fall aspen colors in the trees when this storm hit. So we didn't even have all of the leaves, blow off the trees before this one came, which I think put some of these trees in even more jeopardy because the trees also just weren't expecting it. So a lot of damage can be had from some of these storms, and also just taking into consideration just some of your insurance premiums. There's just a lot of things you have to take into account if you are moving to a place like Denver that's going to have more severe weather than you might be used to on a coastal town or even some of these places in the Midwest. So just keep that in mind, that weather and just this always keeping you on your toes aspect to living in Denver is something that you definitely want to consider. And the last thing I'll leave you with is just being aware of, how it can be very different being in Denver in the spring versus the summer versus the fall versus the winter. So if you haven't spent too much time yet in Denver, I would just recommend trying to come out and visit in a couple different times of the year, just so you can see firsthand what it's like to live in a place that might have seemed amazing in the summertime, but come fall and winter, when it's starting to have some of these types of, rare, but still pretty consistent, it happens every year, these types of, weather storms, just being able to experience that for yourself. So going into a second thing that I think is a must that you have to think about before moving to Denver, and this one is more of a positive, and that's going to be just really understanding that, Denver itself has a ton of outdoor recreation and just Mother Nature benefits to it. And you don't always just have to think of Colorado and Denver as, I got to get up to the mountains. So a lot of people will say the reverse to this point that I'm making to you today, where people move to Colorado to enjoy the Rocky Mountains. There aren't as many job opportunities in the mountains, so a lot of people will live in Denver and then have these aspirations to commute and just go up to the mountains on the weekends and just enjoy the mountains as much as possible. I'm all about that. I lived up in the mountains for 14 years up in Aspen. I've done that lifestyle and I love it, and I'd love to get back to that eventually in my life too. But I just want to make a point here that there is still a ton of amazing things to do in Denver. So, even if you are somebody that wants to move out to Colorado and be in Denver and enjoy all of these mountain activities that are out your back door, go for it. I'm 100% in agreement with that, but there's also a ton of great stuff in Denver. For one, Denver has over 200 parks, and some of these are the best in the nation, in my opinion. I haven't found other parks traveling to other states that have the same level of just care, meaning just very well manicured sidewalks and all the different plants, the flora, the fauna, all that great stuff. They just do a phenomenal job with upkeep on the parks here in Denver. So some of these parks you might already be familiar with: Wash Park, Sloan Lake. There's also a great park known as City Park that's close to the Denver Zoo and has some great views of downtown Denver, and even some others that are a little bit more southwest, like Bear Creek Lake Park. On top of all of these more well-known parks, like I said, there's over 200 in Denver, and they all have that same high level of just care. Denver does a great job with just upkeep and just really taking pride in how these parks are always provided to the residents. So this is something that you might not think about until you come out here, but there are so many opportunities just to enjoy the outdoors and Mother Nature without going to the mountains. Definitely get up to the mountains as much as you can, but there's still some great options here in Denver. I actually shared this in a video a couple weeks ago, but something else that just came out, has really been talked about a lot in the news over the last few weeks, is Denver just finished what they call the Denver Orbital Trail. And the Denver Orbital Trail is actually all of these different sections of trails around the entire city of Denver that they've purposefully connected to one another to make this complete 360-degree orbital type trail. I think it's like 28 sections of trails. It's almost 200 miles. I think it'd be super cool to just have that as like a bucket list thing. If you're considering moving here to Denver, make that like, something you're trying to accomplish in the first year or two that you're out here to literally walk the entire, I think it's 188 miles. So doing the entire trail system to get a very in-depth, unique perspective of all that Denver has to offer. So just thought I'd share that with you guys again too, because I think it is a really cool, fun new way to experience Denver. It also connects with some apps, so you're able to very easily know where you're going, make sure you're on the right trail. And I think they've done an exceptional job just with really promoting the ease of use with this trail system. This last point about the green and the mother nature and just the benefits of living in Denver and all that that has to offer is how so many homes nowadays are being built with that intention in mind. So especially if you're looking at houses in Sloan Lake, Highlands, Wash Park, any of these more urban but trendy neighborhoods, a lot of these homes are now having rooftop decks. So a lot of times what's happening is you'll find an old 1900s, maybe 1920s, 1930s, just a very old 100-year-old home sometimes are getting scraped and getting replaced with duplexes that are more of a townhome format where you have a very vertical style of house where you come in with ideally an attached garage, but then immediately have to go up one level to the kitchen and then maybe up another level to the bedrooms and then up another level to your rooftop deck. And I think these are just really cool, unique ways to live nowadays because you get to experience not only amazing views in most cases, but a lot of times builders are also purposefully putting irrigation lines and giving you the ability to have a lot of greenery on your rooftop. So even if you're not leaving your house, you're able to go up and have this little oasis on your rooftop with great views, lots of sunlight, nice, hopefully some breeze going through there. And just, again, having the ability to have a lot of greenery and your own plants just to feel like you are in your own park or your own little oasis. So something that I think is always going to continue to be a very hot style of building here in Denver are these rooftop patios, these rooftop decks. And then the third point that I wanted to bring up that I said you don't want to miss out on this one, and that's just going to be the high cost of living for Denver. I've done a very full in-depth video on this recently on the cost of living in Denver. So make sure you guys check that one out. I'll link it up to us here up above on the video today for you to check out. But what I wanted to talk about more specifically on the expenses of living in Denver nowadays is a couple things. First, I want to talk about property taxes and also HOAs. So with property taxes, Colorado for the most part is pretty good. It's usually about 0.4 or maybe 0.5, so about 0.5% of whatever it is that you're paying for a home. That's usually what you can associate with what your property taxes are gonna be. So if you have a $500,000 home, most likely you're gonna have property taxes somewhere in that $2,500 to maybe $3,000 mark. So again, kind of like 0.4 to 0.5%. However, you definitely got to keep an eye on any newer construction communities. So anywhere that is a area that's just recently been built, they're still putting in maybe even some of the streets, some of that civil engineering aspect, but also just a lot of development still to be done. Those sometimes can see as high as even 1%. So when you start looking at houses, and I'm always very good with my clients about sharing this with you, you always want to have that information going into previewing some of these homes and different communities, because that could be a deal breaker. If you're talking about even, let's just say again, a $500,000 home, $2,500 a year versus $5,000 a year, that could, factor into just the costs of everything else that you're accounting for and budgeting for, and might make or break the deal that you're trying to do. So keep that in mind. And then with HOAs, these can obviously vary significantly. Not all homes have them, but definitely any sort of a master plan community, a lot of the newer construction communities, they're gonna have some form of an HOA. And just make sure you're aware of that, because in a state like Colorado, in a city like Denver, because of the weather that we have here, a lot of times HOAs will include certain levels of snow removal, especially if you have over a certain amount of snowfall. Where I used to live in Sloan Lake, if we had more than 4 inches of snow, then the HOA would pay for snow removal services. If it was below 4 inches, the homeowner was responsible for clearing the sidewalks in front of their homes. That would just be one example, though, of how the additional weather factors that we have here in Denver can add into that HOA cost, and you might be seeing higher HOA monthly costs than you might be used to in other states, maybe where you're currently living and considering moving from to Denver. And then similar to that HOA, you also got to think about just utility costs. So obviously in the summertime, Denver is a lot hotter than people realize. Last year we actually had a stretch where I think it was almost 100 days consecutively over 90 degrees in temp. So, we're having, significantly warm summers here in Denver, and that's going to lead to higher air conditioning bills in the summertime, as well as water costs to keep your lawns green. And in the wintertime, since it is obviously a pretty cold place in the winter, you're going to have a little bit higher utility bills with your gas for heating your home. So just to take that into consideration and just realize what you're currently spending, maybe in a place that's a little bit more of a consistent temp year round, you might be caught off guard with higher utility costs. I'll also share one quick story with you for personal experience. So I live in Littleton, which is the southwestern side of Denver, and we had a very hot summer, as I mentioned, with a lot of days over 90 degrees. And I had just some issues with my lawn where it just was not getting green. It was just having all these bald spots and just issues. So I had, bumped up my water usage and went from every other day to a period of time for about 3 weeks where I was watering almost every single day, which was obviously an increase in my water consumption. What I didn't realize is with water and also with electricity, they have these different levels of usage. And once you go above a level of usage for that given bill period, that given month, you're now in a new tier where they're charging you a higher price per kilowatt for electricity, or also with water, just per gallon. And they're doing this to try and really motivate people to be more conscious of their consumption of energy and with water. And I should have probably done a better job with that, but I didn't realize this until it was too late. My water bill went from like $40 a month to almost $200. So that's just an example, again, of how these little times of year where you might need to be using more utilities can significantly increase your budget, and you might be catching an unexpected bill like I did with 5 times what you typically spend. In addition to the utilities, there's also some other just kind of unexpected costs that you guys might not be thinking about considering moving here to Denver. And one of these is going to be just the cost of hobbies. And I've talked about this before, and this is something that a lot of other videos that I found on YouTube don't really go into as much as I think they should, because this is a legitimate expense that you might not be realizing until you get out here. And that is, again, just the cost of picking up new hobbies in Colorado. So, a lot of people that move to Colorado, one of the first things that they really want to get more into is skiing, and rightfully so. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's one of the reasons why I still live here in Colorado, and hopefully it's something that you are also going to pick up and have be something new, or maybe just something that you're going to continue to get better and better at, because Colorado has the best skiing in the nation, in my opinion. So skiing is an example, though, of you think it might just be, a couple things that you have to buy, maybe a new jacket, maybe rent a pair of skis, a couple things. Yeah, it's going to be expensive, but no big deal. You really start adding everything up, it can turn into thousands of dollars, and that's just for one person. If you have a family, this literally could be a $10,000 or more expense just for one season if your entire family is really wanting to get into a hobby like skiing. Not only is it just, the skis, renting or buying a new pair of skis, it's getting, all the equipment, the gear, the, jacket, pants, gloves, hat, helmet, goggles, all these things just keep adding up. And if you aren't very experienced, you also are probably gonna want to do some lessons, which are very expensive, and just the lift ticket itself or the season pass. Lift tickets this past winter in a couple of the ski areas like Aspen and Vail even broke $300 for one day during the peak season. So like Christmas to New Year's, and I think over President's Weekend in March also are the peak times where the pricing is just insane. And I remember buying lift tickets for like 20 bucks back in the day, and now literally 10 plus times that. So just all these different expenses really do add up. So if you are coming out here, and that's a big reason why you're coming out to Colorado and to Denver, just make sure you're at least thinking through some of these unexpected costs, because they can add up. And what's the point of living in a beautiful place if you can't enjoy all that it has to offer. So just wanted to make sure you guys also took that into consideration. But to round this video out and just to recap the 3 things that I talked about that I really think are important to consider before moving here to Denver, Colorado. Number 1, just how we really are a city with a sunshine with a twist mentality. And what I meant by that was how there are literally days where you can have all 4 seasons in a 24-hour period of time like we just experienced recently here. So number 1 is just the volatility when it comes to weather and just what to expect. And number 2, talking a little bit more just about nature and how Denver really does have so many great parks, over 200 in fact, and also just all the green spaces that exist on these rooftop decks that are so popular nowadays, and just how many great options are available in Denver without having to go up to the mountains. Definitely check out that orbital trail that I shared with you earlier too, because that is, I think, one of the coolest new features of Denver. And then number 3, once again, just that unforeseen cost of living, not just with the cost of real estate and some of the other things that are more commonly talked about in other videos, including some that I've done in the past, but more specifically hobbies and just some of the things that you don't really think about until you're out here. And they're the reasons why you moved to Denver to do stuff like skiing, golf, mountain biking, all these hobbies that are just very expensive. And then in addition, property taxes, HOAs, and some of that other stuff. So hopefully all 3 of those got you thinking a little bit more, and hopefully were some things to just consider that you maybe haven't thought about quite as much as with some other videos that I've done or other content creators have done that you've watched recently. So I just wanted to really make sure you guys got some new perspective on some of this stuff. But before I close out, again, my info is down below. Would love to connect with you guys. Even if you're not seriously considering moving for another year or 2, I'd love still the opportunity to connect with you. I send out a weekly email newsletter with a ton of valuable info. You guys can sign up for that just by, again, sending me a quick text or visiting my website, adamsellsdenver.com. And before we close out, one last time, my brand new relocation guide. I just finished putting this together. Took a lot of work. Over 20 of my favorite neighborhoods, all the best bars, restaurants, trails, everything that you need to know from a Denver native. All of that is in this guide and it's completely free. The link is down below in the video description. So before you guys leave YouTube today, click that link, get yourself a free copy. If you have any questions after going through it, reach out. I would love to provide any additional info that I might be able to. And with that, hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Look forward to sharing with you an all new episode of Living in Denver next Monday. Until then, have a good one. Bye.